This is the Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union. Let me welcome back Brandon Arnold. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we didn't get the red wave, right? The big red wave. But we will get a more powerful Freedom Caucus. What can we expect for the next 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be quite a bit of gridlock on Capitol Hill in general. But having those gavels in the House, assuming that they do indeed get those 6 seats that they need to pick up the majority, those are huge. Having that power is immensely powerful because it allows you to have the subpoena power. It allows you to conduct oversight over the Biden administration, to find out where those COVID dollars are going, to find out what they're doing at the IRS with that $80 billion and the 80,000 plus new agents that they're going to hire. So having that investigative power is tremendously powerful. And it also helps, of course, to slow down Biden administration's policies. They've said they want to go full speed ahead. They haven't listened to voters. They say they want to just continue with the agenda that has failed this country in so many different ways. But fortunately, this will be an enormous break on it.
But is this going to be 2010 all over again? Remember, there was a wave in 2010, and then immediately we heard from Paul Ryan. Well, what do you want us to do? We've only got one house, in one branch of government. Does this mean that the will in the Senate may be stronger? I mean, whose will do you think is going to be stronger here? Potentially Kevin McCarthy's or Chuck Schumer's?
Well, I don't know about that, but here's the question. I mean, are Republicans going to roll up their sleeves and actually take on some of the policy issues that are facing this country? I'm hopeful that that's the case because there are some substantive issues that, of course, are really bad for Americans right now, namely inflation, high gas prices, high food prices, you name it. So they need to have a laser focus, like on if they want to get anything done. They need to have a laser focus on these particular issues. And that, of course, starts with spending. They need to get spending under control. The Biden administration has spent trillions and trillions of dollars. We have deficits, enormous deficits as far as the eye can see. In 2011, right after that Republican wave that did in fact take place, we did get the Budget Control Act that helped to trim spending. It didn't do nearly enough, but it helped to trim spending and at least put a little bit of a break on the runaway excesses of that previous Congress.
Yeah, but a lot of that, we've heard this. We've been down this road. They cut proposed spending or they slowed the growth, right? I mean, getting them to actually spend less, to actually cut the budget by 1%, 2%, 3% seems to be almost impossible. And again, I don't look, maybe we could say to ourselves, okay, great. It won't go through the House, but the Senate, the Senate is still going to be the Senate under Senate Democrats. And we've seen some Senate Republicans were all too happy to help the Democrats in basically giving them the majority.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you only have so much power in the minority. So, of course, if we had a conservative president, we have a conservative House and Senate, then, of course, we could try to get some substantive spending relief done. We used that majority for the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act back in 2017 instead of addressing spending. I think that was a good move because it got our economy back on track. We had a roaring economy for several years until the pandemic hit. But we do need to get that majority back if we do want to address spending and entitlement reform in a serious way. Until then, we're going to be working around the margins. And I'd rather see something that put a slight brake on this administration. I'd rather see something that trims spending left and right rather than see this reckless policies that have taken place. The American Rescue Plan Act, they spent $2 trillion, didn't raise a nickel, didn't offset a single nickel of that spending. The Inflation Reduction Act, that was a completely ridiculous piece of legislation that will possibly even increase inflation. So at least we won't get these horrible, horrible multi-trillion-dollar packages. Is that a win? No, but it's better than an enormous loss.
No, that's true. But should we brace? I mean, this is a lame duck session. Should we brace for some crazy rammed down spending package? I mean,
yes. I mean, we could be looking at trillion. This could be the biggest, most expensive lame duck period in our entire nation's history. And that's because we not only have to continue the funding of the federal government that expires in mid-December, but we have enormous proposals. The child tax credit, you could be talking about hundreds of billions of dollars a year if they extend it the way they want to. The debt ceiling. Bernie Sanders wants to extend this debt ceiling years into the future. Why? Because he thinks if Republicans have a seat at the table when the debt ceiling is reached later this year, later next year in the fall, that they will be able to extract some meaningful spending reductions. He does not want that process to occur, so they want to expand this debt ceiling. Again, enable trillions of dollars of additional spending to take place over the next couple of years. So this could be an extremely costly lame duck. There's, of course, no accountability to voters because we're just past the election, except maybe in Georgia. But this is a very concerning time for taxpayers, and people ought to be paying a very close eye on what's going on in Washington right now.
So we've learned there's no such thing as unsustainable to the Democrats. No such thing, right? If they could leapfrog a couple years, raise the debt ceiling, I don't know where they're going to raise it to, but do you think a lot of voters, and I'm not trying to insult anyone, but people are busy in their lives. Once you get beyond a certain amount of money, a certain amount of debt and deficit spending, it just becomes it's just something you can't wrap your head around. What's 31 trillion versus 33 trillion?
Yeah, I mean, I've been screaming about the deficit and the debt for over 25 years. It's been kind of one of my biggest issues. It's the white whale. But here's the thing. Here's the cause for optimism for you, Andrew.
All right, give me some.
We right now have successfully tied inflation to this overspending. People are more concerned about deficits than they ever have been because they rightfully recognize this is excessive spending comes at a cost. It has helped to pour fuel on the inflation fire. And inflation is breaking the backs not just of conservative Republicans, but of people all across the economic spectrum. And I think there's finally a little bit of concern about this reckless spending and a little bit of desire to get it under control and act in a fiscally responsible manner.
I don't sense, we heard Biden say it, he's not going to change his tune on anything. No matter what the Republicans pass in the House, it's going to die in the Senate. So if they say we need to start drilling or we need to, cut taxes or whatever it is, the Democrats in the Senate and Biden are going to basically they're just going to squash and kill any conservative economic proposal, even if it brings relief. They think they have a mandate to continue down this path for the next 2 years. Biden kind of said it himself. All right, I'm out of time. I got to leave it there, Brandon. Thanks for joining us.